Hey everyone, welcome to my latest video. In this I'm going to be taking you through an urban sketch I did in the east end of Toronto. I'm starting the way I start most of my sketches, with pencil, picking a basic unit in the scene, and then measuring it out on the page to figure out my composition. That's what I was doing at the beginning with my fingers. I usually use them to mark out the height of the drawing, and then here you can see I'm doing the extents to the left using that same basic unit horizontally, and I'm blocking in the drawing with those perspective lines, the basic unit measurements in pencil first, and then I'll add the ink afterward. And so now I'm going over with a fountain pen. I'm using a platinum ink that is waterproof. It doesn't run. Works really great for watercolor and washes after the fact. It only takes a few minutes to dry and you're good to go. The car in the left foreground is Mazda Miata, which I have a bit of a soft spot for. It, in the end, is the reason I chose this vantage point. I'm also sitting at a nice neighborhood cafe, so it was a good spot to draw as well. And this is an A5, I think, landscape size notebook. It's a bit smaller than the sketchbook I just finished. And I find it's a bit harder to compose the images on the page without them being sort of the full size of the spread, which is nice, but I also like there to be some white space around the sketch. I find harder to do in a sketchbook of this size. So I gave myself about an hour, I think, all told for this sketch. So I'm trying to move quickly for me. So I think I spent about, this is obviously sped up, but I spent about 20 minutes getting the pencil and pen in, as I wanted to give myself a good amount of time for the watercolor. And there we go. So I'm starting with a nice light sienna type tone, getting the sun tone on the street. And that'll be the base for my highlights. And then some nice, I wanted a pretty saturated sky because it was a very blue sky day that day. And then I'm using a liner brush, which I've used in some of my more recent videos, and kind of scraping it on its side to get a texture for the trees and the foliage. This is a synthetic liner brush, and I'm wondering if a real fur brush would be better. I really like the mop brush I have that is not synthetic. It's a real, I think it's squirrel fur, and I really like the way it works. So the next round of purchases I do, I think I'm going to try to find a real liner brush. And so there's one thing that I'm struggling with, which is where I have fine textured edges like this, like the trees, and then behind it a shadow, because I find it nice, and it gives really crisp edges when it's against a white or a very light wash. But having to go, you'll see later in the video, and give the front of the houses the shadow behind the foliage, I find very challenging. So if anybody can point me to some examples, I'd be thrilled with how other people have managed that. So now we're adding the first layer of shadow wash. So in this scene, the trees, the street, the cars were all in really bright sun, but it was actually the edge of the buildings that was in sun, and all of the front faces of the buildings were in shadow. And so you can see I'm using the liner brush to try to keep some of the texture to the trees, but it's not as crisp. So work in progress. Cars are another one that I struggle with, just even the form of cars, but then also the lighting. It's hard to just give them a tone. There's a lot of really contrasty tones in the chrome or just the finishes of the car. You get really strong reflections that can be very dark and then also very light, and I find I can't quite capture that as well as I would like yet. And so it's at around this stage that I like to go back over with ink after the first couple washes and pull forward some of the edges that are important to the drawing. And it just helps give some clarity as to what I'm trying to get at this stage. And so this is near the end of the hour that I'd given myself, and I'm not quite done. So I'm trying to just get something I'm happy with while I'm on location. And so this is where I've got, and here's a view of the scene just as a reminder. And while I was home, I just added a few punchier shadows and a couple people. Thank you so much for tuning in.